All right, so we're live. This is episode 2. So excited for this. You guys are watching the Chronicles chat hosted by Kevin Sullivan, myself, and today we have a pretty amazing guest. I'm really excited for this episode because I think it is something that a lot of us have probably thought about in the past. How to start a clothing brand, where to start, some of the trials and tribulations, some amazing stories. So I'd like to introduce George Hamilton, the founder of Hollywood Hamilton.
Thanks for having me, Kev.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a lot of fun and a lot of great questions. We were talking before this, and you kind of get hit up a lot about your brand and how it started. And I think you're one of the few people that I know that has been able to really keep this going and not like, hey, here's a couple T-shirts. Okay, cool, that was awesome. On to the next thing. Like, you really have a true brand. So I want to learn more, and I'm sure the viewers do as well. But before we get into too much detail on that, can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so thanks for the intro. I appreciate it. My name is George Hamilton, live here in Tampa, lived here for like the last 7 years. I built the brand back in 2011, actually, is when I conceptualized the idea. But, I wasn't a fashion guy in terms of school. I was a business guy at heart, always had a passion for clothing. I played soccer in college, and that's kind of where this whole idea kind of stems. So I'm just your average business guy. I like to be creative, and it's something about pursuing your own kind of things that really kind of got me into the business. And once I got into it, it really drove that from there.
That's amazing. So you've been doing this for 10 years. I mean, that's pretty amazing to stick with something and create what you've created. So that's just commendable in itself. And then obviously I'd be remiss if I didn't point out your background. That's kind of your, I guess,
signature, right?
Yeah.
Part of the brand, man. Yeah. And then to kind of go back, over the 10 years, I kind of say that with a double edge, right? Like I wasn't fully in. That's when we kind of conceptualized it. And really over the last couple of years, as you really start to dive in, and get into the last couple of years, that's really where the bulk of it, the growth has been. But yeah, we, I try to incorporate, we have our brand, we have our logo, but I wanted a pattern, and I wanted something visually that outside of, your typical logo and name, that's going to be something that you stick with and you see, and hey, that's Hollywood Hamilton. So we put it on everything. You've seen it from our fashion shows. We had a casket where we painted. I had my R8 wrapped in it. We've done murals in it. It's on the clothes. It's on, accessories, carpets, tables, you name it. We try and put our stamp on it. I love the pattern. Everyone is unique. And you're looking at like a 40-foot wall behind me that's got that pattern on it right now. So
that's amazing. So do you think, like, with creating a brand, that signature, whether it's I guess we could almost equate to what you have as almost like a logo. Do you think that's I imagine you would agree that it's incredibly important, but did you kind of come up with different renditions, or was it like, does it just kind of hit you one day like this fit, or kind of talk about how important branding is in a logo and kind of that signature?
Sure. Yeah. No worries, man. Now with that, it's kind of funny because, I'm sure you've seen it before, right? You've seen patterns like it. Every artist gets their inspiration from different things. Just to kind of name a few, you think of guys like Virgil Abloh and Off-White, where they have stripes, but it's not the same thing. And I never wanted to be recognized, as a copycat of Virgil Abloh. The same way that you have other patterns where you wanted to be recognizable without having it to be said, right? One of the artists that I kind of look at, Cause, that's kind of one of the things that he always had visually, that, with the skull and the eyes, regardless of when back in his earlier days, if he didn't write Cause on a graffiti, on a poster, on something like that, you knew it. The same way that when you look behind you and you see, headlights from a certain car company, that's a staple of that brand before you even saw the logo, before you even saw the car. So for me, I wanted something that outside of that, as we grow, that you have something that you can look at and go, that's a Hollywood Hamilton piece, or, every single one is different. We try and do every single pattern as a unique one. Whether it's a T-shirt, certain things are going to work. When it's walls, there's certain ways that you just look at a certain section and go, I really appreciate this this how the pattern right here turned out. And this section looks really, really smooth and clean. And sometimes you want a bigger section, and sometimes you want, tight, really intricate lines. So for me, every single one is different, which is really cool, because every one you have an appreciation for, even though, it's your signature pattern. That right there is kind of cool. But from a branding perspective, trademark perspective, you can't go and trademark every single one of those. If you talk to somebody like that, they're going to say, hey, every single element about that has to be the same pattern. But there is brand recognition, and you do have some sort of, not to say brand authority, because I'm using the wrong word there, but you do have some brand power of saying, hey, that's part of what we do. That's a signature of what we've done. And there's some brand loyalty, or not loyalty, but some legal power there in terms of, if anybody tries to say otherwise, that it's, not you. So.
Yeah, no, I get exactly what you're saying. So, I mean, I think summed up, it's incredibly important to have that signature and to be able to have that, where if they don't see the name, Hollywood Hamilton, they're like, oh, at least I recognize that and I recognize that brand. So that's amazing. And obviously posting it everywhere and putting it on as many things as possible in a tasteful way, of course, is crucial in order to, continue the brand and grow and have that recognition. So can you kind of just transitioning, I know we've kind of talked about it a little bit. Can you kind of tell us about the early years of the brand and kind of a little bit of history and how it came about? So, of course, with any podcast, there's always going to be a little bit of technical difficulty. So now we're going to hear George uncut and uncensored, no headphones. So, kind of where we were transitioning to is the early years of the brand. So tell us kind of how it came about and, what the history was, rather.
Sure, man. So like I said, this has been like 10 years in the making from infancy to kind of where it is now. But where it kind of really began was in my college years. Back when I was in college, I went to a small school where I was playing soccer. And, back then I was still into clothing, still into fashion. It was kind of funny back in high school, looking back, I got best dressed. So I kind of always look back at that and kind of go, I wonder, was it meant to be kind of thing. But in college, I was doing some modeling type stuff for some small like boutiques and, just at small stuff where I was at school, right outside of Atlantic City. And, that kind of got me into being a little bit more into some of the different kinds of fashion and, some of the little elements like doing small runway shows or doing a fashion show or linking up with boutique owners. And, for me, that was, this is dating myself here, the 10 years, that was like Ed Hardy was pretty big back then. You had some other brands there and, some of the things you could appreciate.
The thing, man, that Ed Hardy was like, if you weren't rocking the, the full getup, the hat and the sequence shirts, you weren't even doing it right.
And especially because like I said, I grew up outside of Atlantic City, in between Philadelphia and there. So, the Jersey Shore culture, if we call it that, that was influential in certain ways. But, there was brands that I was, definitely in the skate culture and upcoming streetwear, like Obey, the Hundreds, some Diamond Supply, PacSun has even changed over the years, what they used to put in there, the surf brands, and now it's more of the streetwear. But at that time, there were certain brands that I could really respect and enjoyed their artwork and the graphics. And at other times, I really appreciated the simplicity and the styling of other clothes. And when I, here in Tampa or, most major cities, when you're a young college kid, you go out to be seen and where you go, kind of dictates the environment, right? And how you dress and the culture. And for us, we didn't have, like I said, it was a small school. We didn't have, a place that we really go to outside of, your small local bars. And we didn't really have, a lot of good ones, or if you're going to house party. So we went to Atlantic City. And if you think of Atlantic City and like a lot of big places, they have dress code. You have to wear a collared shirt. You have to wear a jacket. So for me, thinking about fashion and that style, certain things clashed. You couldn't wear a lot of graphics with a jacket, or, you didn't want to wear a button down because you didn't feel in your element. So for me, what I try to do is not to say work my way around it, but if I knew, hey, I can wear, and extended tees and some of that stuff was starting to just get in there. But if I could pair that with a jacket, I could get in And then once I get in, I take my jacket off. So I was able to kind of beat the system there. And that's kind of, the inkling of, I wanted to create, and I was starting to style and pair things together. But as I found more and more and what I wanted, I was finding less and less of it. Or it was, hey, I like this element here and I like this. I wish I could blend them together. So that's kind of where I started with the idea of kind of experimenting with kind of creating my own brand. And like I said, I was business minded, not really fashion, but I liked fashion. So I got with actually friends from school that were, artistic and basically said, hey, I have this concept. I kind of had some initial drawings and ideas. I'm like, can you help me bring this thing to life? And, we went through iterations. I remember we had a sheet of like 10 different logos, and, looking back, the logo has evolved from there. But at that time, we had a logo, and I'm like, okay, great. I didn't know what to call it, but I kind of had an idea, because even a name, when I'm like, I don't have a company, like, what do we call it? And like I said, I played soccer, and I always liked the flashier stuff. I liked the bright cleats. I drove the bright car. And so on the field, my coach and players and, teammates call me Hollywood. So obviously my last name is Hamilton. So I have a buddy, and still to this day, he'll send me messages and say, you owe me credit for, calling you Hollywood Hamilton. Where's my check? Kind of kidding around. That's kind of how it came to be. And that's kind of how that name came about. Because again, like when I looked at it from that perspective, you look at a lot of brands that you don't really know, are by their owners. You have Huff, which is play off of the last name and stuff like that. You have guys like Tommy Hilfiger, or, other guys that kind of bring their name into it, like Nicky Diamond's a Diamond Supply, of playing off of those nicknames and stuff like that. So a lot of that it kind of fit, because it wasn't about building a brand at that time. It was really about just creating clothes that I wanted to create, that I thought were cool. And it was kind of at that time in college that, getting them out on campus, and people saw them and they're like, hey, can you make me one? And then it kind of started like, hey, maybe I put up a website, do stuff from there. And, I learned really quick, you outsource a company to kind of do your printing. And what I saw was, it wasn't the quality I wanted. And, that's what you get for using local print shops that, print anything and everything. And their quality isn't about being high fashion or being really well done. So that's kind of what really drove me into wanting to start my own brand and kind of digging in on all the different levels, because, you understand that the cut of the shirt is just as important, or that is to me, about the graphics and what people like. So some people may like the artistic side. Some people like the fit and the cut. But, if you're working with a local print shop, you're getting the same basic things that everybody has access to. So you can never really be individual. And you're basically going down a path that, I would have been right from the start, where, hey, I like this, but I don't like that. So I wanted to start of really diving into how the clothing is being made, and get involved with the sourcing and the creation of the actual clothing and the cuts and the styling. And, my basis, if you look at a lot of our branding, it's very simplistic in a lot of the designs. And actually this collection is that's upcoming is going to be a lot more graphic based, but it was always about the cut and the fit. Because I thought, first and foremost, if you have a great graphic, if it doesn't fit and it's not nice, it's going to sit at the bottom of your drawer. I want something that at the end of the day is a blank basic, that you want to throw it on because it fits good, it's comfortable, it lasts. So I wanted to put my focus and emphasis on the clothing first, and, the branding elements later, because I thought once you have that as a cornerstone, you can always create more graphics and you can create those signature cuts. So that to me is kind of how the brand evolved. And at that time I had graduated college, and I wanted something else. And I spent a little bit of time in New York City, doing some business stuff. Figured, I still had a